The doorbell camera captured everything. My stepfather's fist connecting with my jaw. My mother's scream cut short. The sound of my phone clattering to the porch. What Brian Henderson didn't know was that I'd already sent the footage to the cloud. And what he really didn't know was that his boss, Karen Williams, had my number on speed dial from a networking event last year. Some people build careers on integrity. Others build them on lies. Brian was about to learn which foundation crumbles first. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Jessica Parker, and I hadn't been home to Portland in 8 months. Not since Thanksgiving, when Brian made it clear that my presence disrupted his routines. The text from Mom came on a Wednesday afternoon while I was in a strategy meeting in Seattle. Can you come home for Father's Day weekend? It would mean so much. I stared at that message for a full minute. Father's Day. The holiday that used to mean burnt pancakes and terrible ties. Now it meant honoring a man who wasn't my father, who'd never tried to be, who seemed to resent that I existed at all. I almost declined. Would have, except Mom added one more line. Please, Jess. I need to see you. Need, not want. Mom never said need. I booked a flight that night. Friday evening, I drove my rental car through familiar Portland streets. The city looked the same. Powell's books still anchored downtown. Food trucks still lined the waterfront. Mount Hood still dominated the eastern horizon. But the house on Cedar Lane felt different the moment I pulled into the driveway. Dad's basketball hoop was gone. The one he'd installed when I was 12, spending an entire Saturday mixing concrete and ensuring it was level. I'd spent hundreds of hours at that hoop, Dad rebounding while I practiced free throws. Now there was just a patch of newer concrete, slightly different in color from the rest of the driveway. I sat in the car, staring at that empty space. Already feeling the loss of something I hadn't seen in 4 years but had assumed would always be there. The front door opened before I could knock. Mom looked thinner than I remembered. Her hair was shorter, styled differently. She wore clothes I didn't recognize, a navy blazer and slacks, too formal for a Friday night at home. Jessica, honey. She hugged me, but it felt performance, like someone might be watching. When she pulled back, I saw it. The careful makeup that didn't quite hide the yellow-green bruise on her cheekbone. Old, maybe a week, fading but visible if you knew what to look for. Mom, what happened to your face? I bumped into the kitchen cabinet. Wasn't paying attention. She touched it self-consciously. You know me, always clumsy. My mother had been an accountant for 15 years before she married Brian. She'd managed complex spreadsheets and balanced books for a dozen small businesses. She wasn't clumsy. She was careful, precise, detail-oriented. The lie sat between us like something physical. Before I could press, Brian appeared from the hallway. Jessica. His voice carried that false warmth I'd come to recognize. Didn't expect you until tomorrow. Change of plans. I kept my tone neutral. Thought I'd come early, spend more time with Mom. He moved into the living room, filling the space in that way large men do when they want you to remember they're large. I'm sure your mother appreciated the notice. Did you let her know you were coming early? I texted her from the airport. Another lie. I'd wanted to see their unguarded reaction to my arrival. The house had changed beyond the missing basketball hoop. Dad's favorite recliner, the one Mom had reupholstered twice because he loved it so much, was gone. Replaced with a leather sectional that looked expensive and uncomfortable. The walls that used to display family photos now showed abstract art, the kind you buy at furniture stores to fill space. The bookshelf Dad built, where he'd arranged his collection of coaching manuals and classic novels, had been emptied. Now it held Brian's trophy collection from corporate golf tournaments and leadership awards. You've redecorated. I tried to keep judgment from my voice. Brian insisted. Mom's smile didn't reach her eyes. Fresh start, you know. After your father, we thought it was time to make the house ours. Ours. As if Dad's memory was something to be erased rather than honored. I wanted to ask where Dad's things went. His books, his photos, the small clay bowl I'd made him in 3rd grade that he'd kept on his desk for 20 years. But Brian was watching, assessing, and I'd learned that direct challenges only made things worse. I brought my suitcase to my old bedroom. That, at least, remained mostly unchanged. My twin bed with the quilt Grandma made. My desk where I'd done homework. The walls still painted the pale blue I'd chosen at 14. But the closet had been emptied of everything I'd left behind. My high school yearbooks, the box of Dad's letters from when I went to college, my collection of track and field medals. Where are my things? I asked Mom, who'd followed me upstairs. Storage unit. Brian thought it made sense since you're not living here anymore. We needed the closet space. Which storage unit? Mom hesitated. I'm not sure. Brian handled it. Of course he did. I unplugged my phone and connected it to the charger I'd brought, making sure it was positioned on the nightstand where the camera had a clear view of the door. Old habit from living alone in the city, but also something else. Instinct, maybe. The feeling that I needed to document whatever this weekend would bring. Dinner was awkward. Brian dominated the conversation, talking about his work at TechCorp Industries, about the new initiative he was leading, about the recognition he'd received from senior leadership. Mom picked at her food, barely eating. I watched them, seeing the dynamic clearly for the first time. Every time Mom started to speak, Brian would interrupt or redirect. When she mentioned a friend from her old book club, Brian dismissed it with a wave. Those women are toxic, Diane. Always gossiping. You're better off without them. I caught Mom's expression. Something flickered there, resentment maybe, or shame. Then it was gone, replaced with that careful smile. After dinner, Brian disappeared into what used to be Dad's den, now his home office. Mom and I cleaned up in silence. When I tried to ask about the bruise again, she changed the subject. Tell me about Seattle. Your job. Are you seeing anyone? The questions felt scripted, like she'd prepared them to avoid real conversation. I'm doing well. The company's growing. I kept it vague. And no, not seeing anyone. Too focused on work. That's good. Mom's voice dropped. Focus on your career while you can. Don't rush into anything. There was weight in those words. Warning, maybe. Or regret. I wanted to push, to ask what she meant, but Brian's voice called from the office. Diane, where's the file I asked you to organize? His tone wasn't asking. It was demanding. I have to. Mom started toward the office. Let me help, I offered. No. She stopped me with a hand on my arm. It's fine. I know where it is. She disappeared down the hall, and I heard Brian's voice again, lower now, but sharp. Can't even do simple tasks. What do you do all day while I'm working? Mom's response was too quiet to hear. I stood in the kitchen, hands gripping the edge of the counter, breathing through the anger that rose hot in my chest. That night, I couldn't sleep. The house felt wrong. Not just changed, but violated somehow. Around midnight, I got up and walked downstairs for water. The hallway night light was off. Dad used to insist on keeping it on, said it was safer. Now the house sat in complete darkness. I used my phone's flashlight, moving quietly. As I passed Dad's old den, I heard Brian's voice. He was on the phone, speaking low but urgent. I pressed myself against the wall, listening. I told you, I've got it handled. The quarterly numbers will be adjusted. Nobody's going to notice. Pause. Because I'm the one who reviews them, that's why. Another pause, longer. Look, I've been doing this for 3 years. Trust me. I know how to manage the reporting. My pulse quickened. Was Brian discussing financial fraud? At Tech Corp, the company that prided itself on ethical leadership and transparency? The company where he was the HR director, responsible for upholding conduct standards? I need to go. Brian's voice shifted. We'll talk Monday. I hurried back upstairs before he could open the door, my mind racing. In my room, I opened my laptop and started searching. Tech Corp Industries financial reports. Brian Henderson's role. Company ethics policies. If Brian was manipulating financial data, that wasn't just unethical. It was illegal. And if his boss knew, if anyone knew, his carefully constructed career would collapse. Saturday morning arrived with gray skies threatening rain. Typical Portland June weather. Mom was already in the kitchen when I came down, preparing breakfast. Brian sat at the table, reading news on his tablet, coffee in hand. Morning, Jessica. Sleep well? Fine, thanks. I poured coffee, hyper-aware of the tension in the room. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Big plans today? Mom asked too brightly. I thought we could visit Dad's grave. I said it deliberately, watching Brian's reaction. He stiffened slightly. It's Father's Day weekend. Seems appropriate. Brian set down his tablet. Actually, I made plans for us. Golf at the country club. My treat. I don't golf. You could learn. He smiled, but it didn't soften his face. Your mother and I are members now. It's a good networking opportunity. I'd rather visit Dad. I held his gaze. Maybe tomorrow we can do something you want. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Brian's jaw tightened. Your father's been dead 6 years, Jessica. Maybe it's time to move on. The words hung in the air like poison. Mom went very still, her hands frozen on the coffee pot. I felt something crack inside my chest. Move on? He was my father. Is my father. Past tense doesn't erase him. Brian stood abruptly. Don't lecture me about family. You're the one who ran off to Seattle. Barely visit. Your mother cries after every phone call because you can't be bothered to come home. That's not fair, Mom whispered. Brian, please. Stay out of this, Diane. He didn't look at her. This is between me and your daughter. My daughter who apparently thinks she can walk into my house and dictate how we spend our weekend. Your house? The words escaped before I could stop them. This was my father's house. This was our home. Brian's face flushed dark red. Was. Past tense, like you said. Now it's mine. I pay the mortgage. I pay the bills. I take care of your mother. What do you contribute? Nothing. You left. I stood too, meeting his aggression with cold calm. I left for college. Then for my career. That's called growing up, not abandonment. Oh, is that what we're calling it? Brian moved closer. Because from where I stand, you abandoned your mother when she needed you most. Left her alone to deal with everything after your father died. Guilt trip. Classic manipulation tactic. I'd read about it in psychology articles, recognized it from business negotiations. But knowing the tactic didn't make it hurt less, didn't stop the small voice inside wondering if he was right. Mom stepped between us. Stop. Both of you. This is exactly what I didn't want. She looked at Brian. You promised you'd be civil. And you, she turned to me, you know how he gets. How he gets? I stared at her. Mom, do you hear yourself? She wouldn't meet my eyes. I'm going upstairs. You two figure out today's plans. She left, and I was alone with Brian. He studied me for a long moment. Then his expression shifted, becoming almost reasonable. Look, I know this is hard. New family dynamics. But your mother is happy, Jessica. Happier than she's been since your father died. I give her stability, security. All I ask is that you respect that. Respect. The word tasted bitter. Hard to respect someone who erases my father from his own home. Those changes upset your mother too at first. But she understands now. Moving forward means letting go. I spent the morning in my room, researching. Tech Corp Industries had been in the news recently for its commitment to ethical business practices. Brian Henderson was quoted in several articles about the importance of integrity in corporate culture. The irony wasn't lost on me. The man who lectured about workplace ethics was potentially committing fraud, and definitely committing domestic abuse. By noon, the tension in the house was suffocating. Mom stayed in her room. Brian worked in his office. I decided to visit Dad's grave alone, needing the space and clarity. Riverside Memorial Park was 20 minutes away, a sprawling cemetery with old oak trees and winding paths. I'd been here for the funeral 6 years ago, numb with shock. Hadn't been back since. Dad's headstone was simple. Michael Parker, beloved husband and father, teacher and coach. The dates of his too short life. Someone had left flowers recently. I knelt, touching the cold marble. Hey, Dad. My voice cracked. I could use your advice right now. The wind rustled through the oak leaves. A bird called somewhere distant. I told him everything. About Brian's control. About Mom's bruises and lies. About the changed house and missing belongings. About the conversation I'd overheard and my suspicions of financial fraud. I wish you were here. You'd know what to do. You always knew what to do. But Dad wasn't there. Just stone and memory and the aching absence of someone who'd made me feel safe in the world. I stayed until the clouds finally opened, rain falling soft and steady. Then I drove back to Cedar Lane, dreading whatever the evening would bring. The house was quiet when I returned. I found Mom in the kitchen, preparing dinner. Her hands shook slightly as she chopped vegetables. We need to talk. I kept my voice gentle. Not now, Jessica. Please. When? When will we talk about what's happening? About the bruises and the isolation and the way he controls everything? She set down the knife. You don't understand. He's been good to me. He takes care of things. Dad took care of things too. Without making you give up your friends and your job and yourself. Your father is dead. Her voice broke. He's dead, and I was alone, and I was terrified of being alone forever. Brian offered me something. Maybe it's not perfect, but it's what I have. So you'll accept abuse because it's better than being alone? I didn't say that. But you're living it. Mom's eyes filled with tears. Just get through this weekend, okay? Then you can go back to Seattle and your perfect life and forget about us. Is that what you think I want? To forget about you? Before she could answer, the front door slammed. Brian's voice carried from the entryway. Diane, where are you? We're going to the Hendersons for dinner. I told you this morning. Mom's face went pale. I forgot. I was making dinner here. Well, unmake it. We're leaving in 20 minutes. He appeared in the kitchen doorway, saw me. You too, Jessica. Derek wants to meet you. I'm not going. I said it flatly. Wasn't a question. Brian's expression hardened. Yes, you are. This is important to your mother. Don't use Mom as an excuse. If she wants to go, fine. I'm staying here. The change was instant. Brian crossed the kitchen in 3 strides, grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise. You will show some respect in my house. Let go of me. I tried to pull away. He tightened his grip. You think you're so smart, so independent. But you're just a spoiled brat who never appreciated what you had. Brian, stop. Mom's voice was small. He ignored her. Your father spoiled you rotten. Made you think you were special. But you're not. You're mediocre at best, and your attitude makes you worse. I felt the familiar sting of tears but refused to let them fall. This is assault. Let go, or I'm calling the police. Go ahead. Brian released me, shoving me backward. Call them. Tell them I grabbed my stepdaughter's arm. See how far that gets you. He pulled out his phone. Better yet, I'll call them. Report you for trespassing. This is my property. You're here on my invitation, which I'm now revoking. Get out. You can't kick her out. Mom found her voice. She's my daughter. And I'm your husband. He turned on her. You want her here more than you want me? Choose. The ultimatum hung in the air. Mom looked between us, trapped. I saw the moment she broke, the moment she chose survival over her daughter. Maybe it's better if you go, Jess. Just for tonight. Let things cool down. The betrayal cut deeper than Brian's words. Fine. I grabbed my purse. I'll get a hotel. Pack your things. Brian's voice followed me upstairs. I want you gone in 10 minutes. I threw clothes into my suitcase, hands shaking with rage and hurt. This was exactly what abusers did. Isolated their victims. Made them choose. Ensured they had no support system. My phone was still charging on the nightstand. I grabbed it, checked the camera angle. Perfect view of the door. An idea formed, cold and clear. Tomorrow was Father's Day. Brian would be at his most performative, playing the role of devoted husband and stepfather. And I would be ready with evidence of exactly who he really was. Whatever happened next, I'd make sure there was a record. I checked into a Hampton Inn near the airport, paying for 2 nights with my credit card. The room was generic and clean, exactly what I needed. Neutral space to think clearly without Brian's presence poisoning the air. I ordered takeout and opened my laptop, beginning the documentation process I'd learned from compliance training at work. Every incident needed dates, times, specific details. The bruise on Mom's face, first noticed Friday evening around 6:15. Brian's aggressive behavior at breakfast Saturday morning, approximately 8:30. The physical assault in the kitchen, grabbing my arm with enough force to leave marks, around 5:45 that same evening. I photographed the bruises already forming on my upper arm, 5 distinct marks where his fingers had dug in. Then I started writing everything down in a password-protected document, backing it up to 3 different cloud services. In corporate investigations, documentation was everything. Memories faded, people recanted, but contemporaneous written records carried weight. I'd seen it play out in workplace harassment cases. The employees who documented everything, who kept detailed notes, they were the ones who prevailed when it came to he said she said situations. My phone buzzed. Mom's number. I almost didn't answer, still raw from her choosing Brian over me. But worry won out. Hello? Jess, honey, I'm so sorry. Her voice was thick with tears. I should have stood up for him. I should have told him to stop. Why didn't you? The question came out harder than I intended. Because I'm scared. She admitted it so quietly I almost missed it. I'm scared of what happens when you leave and I'm alone with him again. Has he hit you before? Silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Mom? Not hit exactly. He pushes sometimes. Grabs my arm like he did to yours. Throws things near me but not at me. Says I'm lucky he has self-control because other men wouldn't put up with my incompetence. That's abuse. You know that's abuse, right? I know. Her voice broke completely. But Jess, I'm 50 years old. I gave up my full-time job when we got married. My savings are gone. Where would I go? What would I do? You could stay with Uncle Tom. He'd take you in a heartbeat. Brian says Tom hates me. Says your whole father's side of the family thinks I betrayed Michael's memory by remarrying. That's not true. Uncle Tom asks about you constantly. He's worried because you stopped returning his calls. Brian said I was spending too much time with your dad's family. That I needed to focus on our marriage, our future. So I stopped calling Tom back. Stopped going to the Parker family gatherings. It was easier than fighting about it. Classic isolation tactics. I pulled up articles on my laptop while we talked, reading about domestic abuse patterns. Do you have access to money? Your own bank account? We have a joint account. Brian manages it. Says it's simpler that way. He gives me an allowance for groceries and personal items. Mom, you need to leave. This isn't going to get better. It only escalates. Tomorrow's Father's Day. She changed the subject abruptly. Will you come by? Brian promised he'd behave. Said he overreacted and wants to apologize. I don't trust him. Please, Jess. I need you here. If you're here, he controls himself better. For a few hours, can you just come by? The desperation in her voice undid my resolve. Against every instinct screaming to stay away, I heard myself agree. Okay. I'll come by tomorrow afternoon. But Mom, we're going to talk about getting you out of there. We're going to make a plan. Thank you, honey. I love you. I love you too. After we hung up, I sat in the hotel room feeling sick. Mom was using me as a human shield, hoping my presence would keep Brian's behavior in check. But that wasn't a solution. That was a temporary band-aid on a hemorrhaging wound. I needed leverage, something that would force real change. I thought about the phone conversation I'd overheard, Brian discussing adjusted quarterly numbers. If he was committing financial fraud at TechCorp, that was my leverage. Companies took ethics violations seriously, especially when committed by senior leadership. An HR director manipulating financial data would be grounds for immediate termination. But I needed proof beyond an overheard conversation. I pulled up TechCorp's website, navigating to their leadership page. Brian's professional headshot smiled back at me, accompanied by a biography highlighting his 15 years with the company and his commitment to fostering ethical workplace culture. The irony was so thick I could taste it. His email address was listed for employee concerns. I drafted a message, not sending it yet, just preparing. Subject line, urgent ethics concern regarding financial reporting. Body, I have information about potential financial irregularities involving senior leadership. Request confidential meeting to discuss. But that felt too vague, too easily dismissed. I needed something concrete. I spent the next hour researching TechCorp's corporate structure, their ethics reporting procedures, their recent financial statements. The company had reported steady growth for the past 3 years, nothing extraordinary but consistent. If Brian was adjusting numbers, what was he hiding? Sunday morning arrived with bright sunshine, Portland's way of apologizing for Saturday's rain. I dressed carefully, choosing jeans and a long-sleeved shirt that covered the bruises on my arm. Then I changed my mind and put on a short-sleeved blouse. Let the bruises show. Let there be visible evidence of what Brian had done. Before leaving the hotel, I checked my phone's settings. Video recording capability, check. Cloud backup enabled, check. Battery fully charged, check. I felt like I was preparing for battle, which wasn't far from the truth. The drive to Cedar Lane took 15 minutes. I parked across the street this time, giving myself clear view of the house and easy exit if needed. Brian's BMW sat in the driveway next to Mom's smaller sedan. I sat in the rental car for a moment, steadying my nerves. My phone was in my pocket, positioned so the camera lens faced outward. I'd tested the angle earlier, making sure it would capture whatever happened. Then I crossed the street and rang the doorbell, even though I still had a key. This wasn't my home anymore. Brian had made that clear. Mom answered, wearing a yellow sundress I'd never seen before. She looked better than yesterday, makeup carefully applied, hair styled. But her smile was strained. "Jess, come in. Happy Father's Day." The greeting felt absurd under the circumstances, but I returned it. "Happy Father's Day, Mom." Brian emerged from the kitchen carrying a Bloody Mary, already drinking at noon. "Jessica." His tone was cordial, almost friendly. "Glad you could make it. Your mother's been cooking all morning." "I made your favorite," Mom said quickly. "Pot roast with those little potatoes you like." "Sounds great." I followed them inside, hyper-aware of everything. The layout of rooms, the nearest exits, the potential weapons if things went wrong. "Stop it," I told myself. "This is Mom's house. You're safe here." But I wasn't safe. That was the reality I'd been avoiding. Brian settled into the leather sectional, gesturing for me to sit. I chose the armchair instead, maintaining distance. Mom disappeared into the kitchen, leaving us alone. "About yesterday," Brian began. "I apologize. I was stressed about work, and I took it out on you. That wasn't fair. Stress isn't an excuse for assault." "No, you're right." He sipped his drink. "I should have controlled my temper better. I'm working on it." "Working on it how?" "Therapy? Anger management classes? What specific steps are you taking to ensure it doesn't happen again?" Brian's expression flickered, annoyance breaking through the apologetic facade before he controlled it. "I don't think therapy is necessary. It was one incident, blown out of proportion. You grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise." I showed him the marks, still visible. "That's not blown out of proportion. Those will fade." He waved dismissively. "You're young, resilient. No permanent harm done. No permanent physical harm. But we both know abuse isn't just physical, is it, Brian?" The temperature dropped. His eyes went cold, and I saw the real man behind the corporate polish. "Careful, Jessica. You're making accusations you can't prove." "I can prove the bruises. And I can prove Mom's bruises too, if she lets me photograph them." "She won't." He said it with complete confidence. "Your mother understands loyalty, even if you don't. Loyalty isn't staying silent about abuse. That's called enabling. You should look up the difference." Brian stood abruptly, and I tensed, ready to run if needed. But he just walked to the kitchen doorway. "Diane, how long until dinner?" "About 20 minutes. Mom's voice carried false cheer. "Why don't you two talk outside? It's such a beautiful day. The patio furniture's all set up." Brian turned back to me, his public smile returning. "Good idea. Jessica, join me outside?" It wasn't really a question. I followed him through the sliding glass door to the backyard, my phone still recording in my pocket. The patio had been upgraded since I'd last seen it, new furniture and a built-in grill that must have cost thousands. Dad's workshop shed stood at the back of the property, looking weathered and unused. "This is nice." I gestured at the setup, keeping things neutral. "When did you get all this?" "Last summer." Brian fired up the grill even though dinner was already cooking inside. "I like to entertain. Your mother's too much of a homebody, but I'm gradually bringing her around." "You're changing her. Making her into someone she's not." "I'm helping her grow. There's a difference." He flipped burgers that didn't need flipping. "Your mother was stuck in the past, clinging to memories of your father instead of building a future. I gave her that future. You gave her control disguised as care." His jaw tightened. "You really don't know when to shut up, do you? That's what your father should have taught you. Respect for authority, especially male authority. But he was too soft, let you walk all over him. Don't talk about my father." I stood, anger overwhelming caution. "You didn't know him. You have no right to judge him. I know he raised a daughter with no respect for the man supporting her mother. No gratitude for the stability I provide. No understanding of how good she has it. Good. Mom's isolated from her family, financially dependent, and afraid. That's not good. That's captivity. Brian moved fast, closing the distance between us. His hand shot out, and I thought he was going to grab me again. Instead, he pointed at my face, finger inches from my nose. You need to leave. Right now. Before I do something we'll both regret. I held my ground, heart hammering but voice steady. Is that a threat? Take it however you want. Just get out of my house and don't come back. You're not welcome here anymore. What about Mom? Ask her. Brian called toward the house. Diane, come out here. Mom appeared at the sliding door, dish towel in her hands. What's wrong? Tell your daughter she needs to leave. Brian's voice carried performance now, playing wounded party. Tell her that her constant disrespect and accusations are tearing this family apart. Mom looked between us, trapped again. The same choice as yesterday. The same impossible decision. Jess, maybe you should go. Her voice barely carried across the patio. Just until things calm down. Things won't calm down. I kept my eyes on Brian. This is who he is. Controlling, abusive, manipulative. It won't get better, Mom. It only gets worse. That's it. Brian grabbed my arm, the same place he'd gripped yesterday, and pain shot through the existing bruises. I said get out. He started pulling me toward the side gate, and I led him for a few steps, making sure my phone captured everything. Then I wrenched free, stumbling backward. Don't touch me. I want witnesses to see this. Stop being dramatic. He advanced again. Nobody's watching. It's just family. Family doesn't assault each other. I pulled out my phone, finger on the recording button I'd already activated. But Brian didn't know it had been recording all along. He lunged for the phone, and I danced backward, holding it high. Give me that. His face was purple now, all pretense of civility gone. Give me the damn phone. No. I circled the patio furniture, keeping obstacles between us. This is my property. Everything on it is mine. Make me. The words came out before I could stop them, childish and provocative. But something in me wanted this. Wanted him to show his true nature on camera. Wanted evidence that couldn't be denied or explained away. Brian feinted left, then dove right, faster than I expected. He caught my wrist, squeezing until my fingers went numb. The phone clattered to the concrete, and I watched in horror as he stomped on it. The screen cracked but didn't shatter completely. Stop it. Mom was suddenly there, pulling at Brian's arm. You're hurting her. Stay out of this. He shoved her away, not hard enough to knock her down but forceful enough to send her stumbling. That's when I knew. This moment, this assault in broad daylight in his own backyard, this was what I needed. This was the evidence that would destroy him. I grabbed the phone from the ground, cradling it against my chest. The video was still recording through the cracked screen, still backing up to the cloud. Everything he'd just done was captured. You're finished. I said it quietly, with absolute certainty. That video is already uploaded. You can't delete it or destroy it. It's in 3 different cloud servers, and if anything happens to me, it automatically sends to multiple people. Brian went very still. You're bluffing. Try me. I met his eyes. I work in corporate marketing. I understand crisis management and digital footprints. Everything you've done in the last 5 minutes is documented and distributed. Including you assaulting Mom. She's my wife. That's not assault. It's a domestic disagreement. Tell that to TechCorp's ethics board. I played my final card. Tell them about the adjusted quarterly numbers too. How you've been manipulating financial data for 3 years. See how that plays with Karen Williams and the executive team. The color drained from his face. How do you know about that? I heard you on the phone Friday night. And I've been researching your company's financial reports. The patterns are there if you know what to look for. You have no proof. Not yet. But I have an overheard conversation, and now I have video of you committing assault. Which do you think TechCorp will investigate first? The HR director who preaches ethics while beating his stepdaughter, or the potential financial fraud? My bet is they'll dig into everything once the first domino falls. Brian looked at Mom, then back at me. Then he did something unexpected. He laughed. You think you're so clever. You think one video ruins me? I've been at TechCorp for 15 years. I have relationships, allies, credibility. You're nobody. A junior marketing manager with family drama. Who's going to believe you? Everyone who sees the video. I held up the phone. This isn't he said she said anymore, Brian. This is documented, time-stamped, uneditable evidence. And I'm going to forward it to every person who needs to see the real you. Starting with your boss. Brian's face transformed into something ugly and desperate. He reached for the phone again, but I was already backing toward the gate, keeping the device close to my body. Mom stood frozen on the patio, one hand pressed to her mouth. The yellow sundress suddenly looked like a costume, something she'd put on to play the role of happy wife on Father's Day. Everything about this scene was performance except for the violence, which was the only authentic thing Brian offered. You send that video and you destroy your mother's life too. Brian switched tactics, his voice taking on a reasoning tone. She'll lose this house, her security, everything. Is that what you want? To make her homeless out of spite? That's not on me. I kept moving toward the gate. That's on you for being an abuser. Mom will be fine. She has family who actually loves her. What family? Your uncle who can barely keep his construction business afloat? Your grandmother living in that retirement home on a fixed income? Brian followed me, maintaining distance now but still predatory. Face it, Jessica. Your mother needs me. Without my income, without this house, she has nothing. You made sure of that. I stopped at the gate, hand on the latch. You isolated her from friends, made her quit her job, took control of her finances. That's not love. That's imprisonment. And now you're threatening her stability to keep me quiet. Classic abuser playbook. I'm trying to protect this family. From what? The truth? I opened the gate, stepping into the side yard. The front of the house was visible now, the street beyond. Witnesses if I needed them. Here's what's going to happen, Brian. I'm leaving now. I'm taking Mom with me. And tomorrow morning, I'm forwarding this video to TechCorp's ethics department, HR department, and your boss Karen Williams. You can prepare your defense or you can start looking for a new job. Either way, your days of terrorizing my mother are over. Jess, wait. Mom finally found her voice. Please don't do this. Don't do what? Report assault? Expose abuse? Mom, he just shoved you. He destroyed my phone. He's threatening your security to keep you compliant. How is any of that okay? It's complicated. She moved toward me, and I saw the defeat in her posture. Brian made mistakes, yes, but he's not a monster. We can work through this. As a family. We're not a family. I gestured between the three of us. A family doesn't operate on fear and control. Dad taught me that. Real families support each other, trust each other, protect each other. This is none of those things. Don't you dare use your father against me. Mom's voice cracked. Michael's dead. He's been dead for 6 years, and I had to figure out how to survive without him. I did the best I could. And I'm not saying you didn't. My tone softened slightly. But Mom, surviving isn't the same as living. You're not happy. You're scared. There's a difference. Brian moved closer to Mom, putting his arm around her shoulders in a gesture that looked protective but was clearly possessive. We're fine, Diane. Tell her we're fine. Mom leaned into him, and I watched her make the choice again. Choosing perceived security over freedom. We're fine, Jess. This is just a misunderstanding. We can talk about it later, after everyone calms down. There's nothing to calm down about. I held up the cracked phone. I have evidence of assault. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a crime. If you want to press charges, that's your choice. Mom's voice went quiet. But it won't bring your father back. It won't fix anything. Maybe not. But it'll stop Brian from doing this to someone else. I looked directly at him. How many people at TechCorp know about your temper? How many assistants or junior employees have you intimidated? How many people have you grabbed or threatened when they didn't comply fast enough? You're making wild accusations now. Brian's arm tightened around Mom. Without proof, without witnesses, it's just slander. I'm done here. Diane, get inside. We're not entertaining this nonsense anymore. Mom hesitated, looking between us one more time. Then she turned and walked back into the house, disappearing through the sliding glass door. Brian followed without another word, and I heard the lock click into place. Standing alone in the side yard, I felt the adrenaline finally crash. My hands shook as I examined the phone. The screen was badly cracked, spiderwebbing from where Brian had stomped it, but the device still functioned. The video had recorded everything and uploaded to the cloud as designed. I walked to my rental car and sat inside for a long moment, breathing through the shaking. The bruises on my arm throbbed. My jaw ached where Brian had hit me Friday night, a pain I'd been ignoring. Everything hurt, but the worst pain was watching Mom choose her abuser over her daughter. I understood it intellectually. Trauma bonding, financial dependence, learned helplessness. But understanding didn't make it hurt less. I started the car and drove, not back to the hotel but toward Uncle Tom's construction office in Northeast Portland. The drive took 30 minutes through Sunday afternoon traffic. Tom Parker Construction operated out of a converted warehouse near the river, and I found Uncle Tom in his office doing paperwork despite it being Father's Day. He looked up when I knocked, his face breaking into a surprised smile that faded when he saw my expression. Jess? What's wrong? Everything. I sank into the chair across from his desk. Uncle Tom, I need help. He closed his laptop and gave me his full attention. The next hour, I told him everything. The changed house, the missing belongings, Mom's bruises and lies, Brian's control tactics, the assault Friday night and today's violence. I showed him the video, watching his face darken as he witnessed Brian shoving Mom and destroying my phone. That son of a bitch. Uncle Tom's hands clenched into fists. I knew something was wrong. Diane stopped answering my calls 2 years ago. I thought she was mad at me for some reason, thought maybe I'd said something wrong at Michael's funeral. It wasn't you. I assured him. Brian isolated her from Dad's family systematically. Told her you all judged her for remarrying. He convinced her she had to choose between her new marriage and her old family. Classic abuser tactics. What are you going to do with this video? Send it to his employer. Brian's the HR director at TechCorp Industries. He's responsible for workplace ethics and conduct standards. I'm betting the company won't appreciate their ethics director committing assault on video. Uncle Tom nodded slowly. That's smart. Hit him where it hurts most, his professional reputation. But Jess, what about your mom? She's staying with him. I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. She chose him again. Made excuses, said it's complicated, told me to leave. I offered to take her with me, and she refused. Then we extract her. Uncle Tom stood, pacing his small office. Your mom is a victim here too, even if she can't see it yet. We don't abandon family, no matter how complicated things get. Michael would never forgive me if I let Diane stay in an abusive situation. How do we extract someone who doesn't want to be extracted? That's the problem. We document everything, we build a support network, and we wait for the moment she's ready. Tom stopped pacing, looking at me directly. Your dad used to say that coaching wasn't about forcing players to change. It was about preparing them for the moment they decided to change themselves. We prepare for when Diane's ready. I thought about Dad's coaching philosophy, how he'd never given up on struggling students or underperforming athletes. He believed in patient persistence, in creating conditions for success, in being ready when people finally committed to transformation. Okay. I can do that. What's the first step? First, you send that video to TechCorp tomorrow morning. Brian needs to face consequences, and companies act fast on documented violence. Second, I'm going to reach out to Diane. Let her know she has options, that my door is always open. Third, we loop in other family members. Your grandmother, your cousins. Build a network so Diane knows she's not alone when she's ready to leave. Uncle Tom pulled out his phone. I'm also calling my lawyer buddy. We need to understand the legal options here. Restraining orders, divorce proceedings, property rights. Information is power. Thank you. The words felt inadequate for what he was offering. Uncle Tom came around the desk and hugged me, and I finally let myself cry. For Mom's choices, for Dad's absence, for the family that had fractured and might never fully heal. Your dad would be proud of you. Uncle Tom said quietly. Standing up to bullies, protecting your mom even when she won't protect herself. That takes courage. I don't feel courageous. I feel exhausted and sad and angry. That's what courage looks like sometimes. Not fearlessness, but doing the hard thing despite being scared and tired. I stayed at Uncle Tom's office for another hour, strategizing. He helped me draft an email to TechCorp's ethics hotline, careful to stick to facts and avoid emotional language. We attached the video with a content warning about violence. The email detailed Brian Henderson's position as HR director, the assault that occurred on his property, and concerns about whether someone with anger management issues should hold a position of authority over workplace conduct policies. We noted the date, time, and that this was not an isolated incident but part of a pattern of violent behavior. Do we send it tonight or tomorrow morning? I hovered over the send button. Tomorrow morning, 8 a.m. Uncle Tom advised. Monday morning when people are checking emails and prepared to respond. Sending it on Sunday night gives Brian time to potentially do damage control if someone forwards it to him. Makes sense. I scheduled the email to send at 8 a.m. Pacific time. Then I created a secondary email to Karen Williams directly, Brian's boss, scheduled for 8:15. If the ethics hotline didn't respond immediately, his direct supervisor would have no excuse to ignore it. What about the financial fraud you overheard? Uncle Tom asked. Do we mention that? Not yet. I closed my laptop. That's hearsay right now. I can't prove what I heard or what it meant. But once TechCorp starts investigating Brian for the assault, they'll likely dig into other aspects of his conduct. If there's financial impropriety, they'll find it. Especially if they audit his access to financial systems and communication records. Smart. Don't overplay your hand. Uncle Tom walked me to my car. Where are you staying? Hotel near the airport. I gave him the name and room number. I'm flying back to Seattle on Tuesday, but I can extend if needed. Keep me posted on TechCorp's response. And Jess, be careful. Brian's going to be desperate when his career implodes. Desperate people do unpredictable things. I'll be careful. But Uncle Tom, Mom's the one in danger. She's living with him. I know. That's why I'm driving over there tonight to check on her. Just a concerned brother-in-law stopping by. If Brian's smart, he won't do anything with a witness present. The hotel room felt sterile and safe when I returned. I ordered room service and spent the evening reviewing the video frame by frame. Brian's aggressive approach, his grabbing my wrist, the phone falling, him stomping on it. Then shoving Mom when she tried to intervene. Every second was clear, undeniable, professionally damning. A man in his position couldn't survive this kind of exposure. I thought about Brian's confidence earlier, his certainty that his 15 years and relationships at TechCorp would protect him. But corporate culture had changed. Companies couldn't afford to overlook violence, not in the current climate. One viral video could destroy a brand's reputation. TechCorp would have to act decisively to protect themselves, which meant sacrificing Brian. My phone rang around 9 p.m. Uncle Tom's number. She okay? Fine. I just left there. Tom sounded frustrated. Diane answered the door, insisted everything was normal. Brian was polite, almost charming. Offered me a beer and small talk about the Trailblazers. It was surreal. That's the public face. I curled up on the hotel bed. He's good at performing normalcy. Did you see any new bruises? No, but she was wearing long sleeves despite it being 70 degrees. Could be nothing, could be something. I tried to get her alone, but Brian stayed close the whole visit. I mentioned you'd stopped by for Father's Day, watched his reaction. He got very still, said you'd had a disagreement but nothing serious. Played it off as family drama. What did Mom say? She backed him up. Said you were upset about old family conflicts and that you'd left on good terms. Uncle Tom paused. Jess, she's rewriting what happened. Either because Brian's coaching her or because she's convincing herself it wasn't that bad. Probably both. So what now? Now we wait for tomorrow. Let TechCorp's response determine the next move. If they suspend or fire Brian, that changes the power dynamic. Diane might be more willing to leave if he's not the successful executive providing stability. And if TechCorp does nothing? Then we escalate. Media, lawyers, whatever it takes. But I don't think they'll ignore this. The video is too clear, too damaging. After we hung up, I lay in the dark thinking about power dynamics and institutional responses. Brian's entire identity was wrapped up in his corporate position. The respect, the salary, the authority. Strip that away and what was left? A middle-aged man with anger issues and mounting legal problems. The house would become a liability if he couldn't make mortgage payments. Mom's financial dependence would flip if Brian lost his income. Everything would shift. Monday morning arrived with gray clouds, Portland reverting to its typical weather. I dressed professionally, as if I were going to my own office, armor for the day ahead. At 7:45, I reviewed the scheduled emails one final time. The ethics complaint was factual and concise. The message to Karen Williams was slightly more detailed, noting that as Brian's supervisor, she should be aware of conduct that contradicted the company's stated values. Both emails included the video file and my contact information. At 7:59, I watched the clock on my laptop. 8 a.m. hit, and the email to TechCorp's ethics hotline sent automatically. 15 minutes later, the email to Karen Williams deployed. There was no taking it back now. The information was out in the world, traveling through corporate servers, about to land in inboxes that would determine Brian Henderson's professional fate. I made coffee from the hotel room's single-serve machine and waited. Corporate responses took time. There would be initial review, consultation with legal, discussion among leadership. No company moved instantly, especially on something this serious. But I'd worked in corporate environments long enough to know that documented violence got attention fast. This wasn't ambiguous harassment or subtle discrimination. This was clear assault on video. Someone would respond. The call came at 9:30. Unknown number with a Portland area code. This is Jessica Parker. Ms. Parker, this is Karen Williams from TechCorp Industries. I received your email this morning. The video is deeply disturbing. I appreciate you bringing this to my attention. My heart hammered, but I kept my voice steady. Thank you for responding so quickly. I understand this is a sensitive situation given Brian's position. Sensitive doesn't begin to cover it. Karen's voice was crisp, professional. I've already escalated this to our legal team and chief ethics officer. We take allegations of violence extremely seriously, regardless of where they occur or who's involved. Can you walk me through the timeline of events? I laid out everything methodically. The initial assault Friday night when I arrived, though I acknowledged I hadn't filmed that incident. The confrontation Sunday afternoon that was fully captured on video. The pattern of controlling behavior toward my mother. Brian's professional position and the irony of an HR director responsible for workplace conduct engaging in violent behavior. Karen listened without interrupting, and I could hear her typing notes. Has your mother filed a police report? No. She's financially dependent on Brian and afraid of the consequences. But I witnessed him assault her on the video when he shoved her. That's documented. Understood. Karen paused. Ms. Parker, I need to be clear about our process. We will investigate this thoroughly. Brian Henderson is being placed on immediate administrative leave as of this morning. He's been informed not to access company property or systems pending the investigation outcome. That's standard protocol for alleged violence. Administrative leave. That was fast, faster than I'd expected. What happens next? We'll conduct interviews, review the video evidence, consult with legal counsel, and make a determination about Brian's future with TechCorp. This process typically takes 1 to 2 weeks, but given the clear video evidence, it may move faster. I'll be the primary contact for this investigation. Can I reach you at this number? Yes. I gave her my email as well. One more thing, Ms. Williams. I mentioned in my email that I overheard Brian discussing adjusted quarterly numbers. I don't have proof of financial fraud, but given his position and access to systems, it might warrant looking into. Karen went very quiet. That's a serious allegation. What exactly did you hear? I recounted the phone conversation from Friday night, acknowledging that I didn't know context or details but that the language suggested impropriety. Karen thanked me and said she'd forward that information to their internal audit team. After the call ended, I sat staring at my laptop. Brian was on administrative leave. His career was in immediate jeopardy. And when he found out I was the one who'd reported him, there would be consequences. I texted Uncle Tom with an update. He responded immediately. Good work. Stay at the hotel. Don't go near the house. Brian will know it was you. He's going to be volatile. I'm heading over to check on Diane now. We'll report back. I spent the next hour pacing the hotel room, alternating between relief and anxiety. Brian was facing consequences, real professional consequences that would undermine everything he'd built. But Uncle Tom was right about the danger. Abusers escalated when they lost control, and I'd just stripped away Brian's primary source of power and identity. My phone rang again at 10:45. Mom's number. I almost didn't answer, expecting Brian to be on the other end, but curiosity won. Hello? What did you do? Mom's voice was shrill, panicked. Brian just got a call from his office. They're suspending him. They mentioned a video, an ethics complaint. Jess, what did you do? I reported the assault. Showed TechCorp exactly who their HR director really is. How could you? She was crying now. You've destroyed everything. He's going to lose his job. We'll lose the house. How could you be so selfish? Selfish? I kept my voice level despite the anger rising. Mom, he assaulted me. He assaulted you. I have it on video. What was I supposed to do? Ignore it? Let him keep hurting people? You were supposed to think about the consequences. About what this means for me, for my life. Now what am I going to do? You're going to leave him. Come stay with Uncle Tom or come to Seattle with me. We'll figure out the finances, the housing, everything. But you can't stay with Brian, not now. He's going to blame you for this. You don't understand. Her voice dropped to a whisper. He's so angry, Jess. I've never seen him like this. He threw his phone across the room. Punched a hole in the hallway wall. He's saying you've ruined his life, that you're vindictive and manipulative. Then get out of there. Right now. Pack a bag and go to Uncle Tom's. I already called him. He's on his way. No. I can't leave. This is my home. Brian needs me right now. He needs support, not abandonment. Mom, listen to yourself. You're protecting the man who hits you. That's not love. That's trauma. Please, I'm begging you, leave that house before this gets worse. I have to go. He's coming back inside. Don't contact me again, Jessica. You've done enough damage. She hung up before I could respond. I immediately called Uncle Tom. He answered on the first ring. I'm 10 minutes away from the house. Just got off the phone with Diane. She's staying with him. Uncle Tom, she said he punched a wall. He's escalating. I know. That's why I'm going over there. Going to insist Diane come with me, at least for a few days until Brian calms down. And if she refuses? Then I stay there until I'm confident she's safe. Maybe my presence will keep Brian in check. Be careful. He knows I'm the one who reported him. He might take it out on anyone connected to me. I can handle Brian Henderson. Uncle Tom's voice carried the confidence of someone who'd worked construction for 30 years, dealing with difficult personalities and physical confrontations. But I'll bring my foreman Mike with me. Extra witness, extra deterrent. The next 2 hours were agony. I tried to work, opening my laptop and reviewing marketing reports from my team in Seattle, but couldn't focus. Every few minutes I checked my phone, waiting for updates from Uncle Tom. Finally, at 1:15, he called. We're at a coffee shop with Diane. She agreed to come out for lunch, get away from the house for a bit. Brian didn't want to let her go, but he couldn't really refuse with Mike and me standing there. How is she? Shaken. She keeps defending Brian, saying he's under tremendous stress, that you ambushed him. But Jess, I saw the house. That hole in the wall is significant. He hit it hard enough to go through drywall. If that had been Diane's face instead of a wall, we'd be at the hospital. The image made me nauseous. What's your assessment? Can you get her to leave? Not yet. She's too afraid of the unknown. The devil she knows feels safer than the uncertainty of leaving. Uncle Tom sounded frustrated. But I planted seeds. Reminded her that Michael would never have wanted her living like this. Mentioned that she has family support, financial options. I think it's percolating. Keep trying. And Tom, thank you. For showing up, for caring, for not giving up on her. She's family. That's what we do. After lunch, Uncle Tom took Mom back to the house. Brian's BMW was gone, presumably off somewhere processing his career implosion. Tom made sure Mom had his number programmed into her phone under a contact name Brian wouldn't recognize, gave her cash in case she needed it, and extracted a promise that she'd call if anything escalated. It was all they could do for someone who wasn't ready to be saved. Tuesday morning brought my flight back to Seattle, but I couldn't shake the feeling I was abandoning Mom by leaving Portland. I called Uncle Tom before heading to the airport. Any updates? Brian came home late last night, apparently very drunk. Neighbor Mrs. Gomez called me around midnight, said she heard shouting from the house. I drove over, knocked on the door, but nobody answered. Lights went off shortly after. This morning I called Diane. She said everything was fine, that Brian was sleeping off a headache. Did you believe her? No. But she's an adult making her own choices. We can't force her to leave. The frustration in his voice mirrored my own. Keep monitoring the situation. I'll be back in Seattle, but I can fly down on short notice if needed. I drove to the airport, checked in for my flight, and sat at the gate feeling like I was making a terrible mistake. Leaving Mom in that house with Brian spiraling felt wrong. But what were my options? Move back to Portland permanently to be a buffer? That wasn't sustainable. Camp out at Uncle Tom's waiting for crisis? That didn't solve anything either. Adults had agency, even when they made self-destructive choices. The flight to Seattle took an hour. I landed, took a rideshare to my apartment, and walked into my sanctuary of floor-to-ceiling windows and carefully curated minimalism. Everything was exactly as I'd left it Friday morning. Clean, organized, peaceful. The contrast with Cedar Lane couldn't have been starker. I unpacked, did laundry, tried to resettle into my normal routine. But Portland haunted me. I kept checking my phone for updates, for crisis calls, for some sign that Mom had finally reached her breaking point and was ready to leave. Wednesday brought an email from Karen Williams at TechCorp. Ms. Parker, this is an update on the investigation into Brian Henderson. After reviewing the video evidence and conducting preliminary interviews, we have terminated Mr. Henderson's employment effective immediately. His conduct violated multiple company policies regarding violence, ethics, and professional standards. Additionally, our internal audit discovered irregularities in financial reporting that Mr. Henderson had access to and responsibility for overseeing. While we cannot share details of that investigation, we have referred the matter to appropriate authorities. Thank you for bringing this situation to our attention. Your courage in reporting workplace-adjacent violence likely prevented future incidents. Brian was fired. Not suspended, not on leave, but terminated. And they'd found the financial fraud, were referring it to authorities. Criminal charges might follow. I should have felt victorious, but all I felt was worried about Mom. A fired Brian was a dangerous Brian. An unemployed Brian facing potential criminal charges was even more unpredictable. I called Uncle Tom immediately. Did you hear? About Brian being fired? Yes. I've been camped outside the house since this morning. Diane called me around 8, said Brian got the termination call at 7 and has been drinking since. She sounded terrified but still won't leave. Why won't she leave? I wanted to scream. What will it take? Sometimes people need to hit absolute rock bottom before they're ready to climb out. Tom's voice was gentle. Your mom's not there yet. She's still hoping this is temporary, that Brian will calm down, that somehow things will go back to normal. But there is no normal to go back to. Exactly. But she needs to realize that herself. The rest of Wednesday passed in anxious waiting. I worked from my apartment, taking video calls with my team, reviewing campaigns, trying to maintain some semblance of normalcy. But my attention was split, always checking my phone, always wondering what was happening in Portland. Thursday morning brought the call I'd been dreading. Uncle Tom's number at 6 a.m. Seattle time. Jess, you need to come back to Portland. Now. What happened? Diane's at the hospital. She's okay, she's going to be okay, but Brian assaulted her last night. Broken ribs, bruised face, concussion. Neighbor called 911 after hearing screaming. Police arrested Brian. He's in custody. My vision tunneled. I'll be on the first flight. Which hospital? Providence Portland Medical Center. I'm here now. Diane's been asking for you. I threw clothes in a bag, booked a flight leaving in 3 hours, and called a car service. The drive to the airport, the security line, the boarding process, all of it passed in a blur. I kept seeing Mom's face, imagining the injuries, replaying every moment I could have done something different. Maybe if I'd stayed in Portland. Maybe if I'd called the police myself Friday night after the first assault. Maybe if I'd been more insistent about her leaving. The flight felt interminable. I landed in Portland at 11:30 and went straight to the hospital. Uncle Tom met me in the emergency department waiting area. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept. She's in room 412. He stood and hugged me. Fair warning, it's bad. Worse than the bruises you saw before. How bad? 3 broken ribs, fractured cheekbone, concussion, defensive wounds on her arms where she tried to protect herself. Tom's voice was flat, clinical. Brian beat her for over an hour before the neighbor finally called police. The officers said the house was destroyed. Furniture overturned, holes in walls, broken glass everywhere. I felt sick. Did she say what triggered it? Everything. The job loss, the investigation, you reporting him. Brian blamed Diane for raising a daughter who would betray family. Said she was a terrible mother who'd turned you against him. Then he started hitting her. Where is he now? County jail. Assault charges, multiple counts. Violation of the implicit protection order since he'd been warned to control his behavior after the video. The DA is taking this seriously, especially with his prior suspension from work. Brian's not getting out anytime soon. Can I see her? Tom walked me to the elevator. 4th floor, turn right. Room 412. Jess, she's been crying a lot. Keep saying she should have listened to you, should have left when you told her to. Be gentle with her. She's fragile right now. I found Mom's room and knocked softly. Come in. Her voice was weak. I pushed open the door and had to steady myself against the frame. Mom's face was swollen and purple, one eye almost swollen shut. Her left arm was in a sling. Bandages covered various cuts and abrasions. She looked small in the hospital bed, diminished in a way that had nothing to do with physical size. Oh, Mom. I moved to her bedside, taking her uninjured hand carefully. I'm so sorry. This is my fault. Don't. She squeezed my hand weakly. This is Brian's fault. Not yours. You tried to warn me. You tried to get me out. I just wouldn't listen. Why didn't you leave? The question came out softer than intended. After everything, why did you stay? I was ashamed. Tears slipped down her damaged face. Ashamed that I'd made such a terrible choice. Ashamed that you were right and I was wrong. Ashamed that I'd let someone erase your father from his own house. It felt easier to stay and pretend things weren't that bad than to admit I'd made a mistake. Mom, leaving an abuser isn't admitting a mistake. It's choosing survival. Dad would have wanted you safe. Your father would have killed Brian the first time he touched me. She managed a small, painful smile. Michael was a gentle man until someone threatened his family. Then he was fierce. I miss that. Miss feeling protected instead of afraid. You'll feel that way again. I promised. You're out now. Brian's in jail. We're going to get you somewhere safe, somewhere you can heal. Uncle Tom's already offered his house. Or you can come to Seattle with me. Whatever you need. I can't go back to Cedar Lane. Panic edged her voice. Not ever. The house is probably a crime scene right now anyway. I tried to keep my tone practical. Once police release it, we'll hire people to clean up, pack your belongings, start the separation process. You don't have to see Brian or that house again if you don't want to. What about money? Without Brian's income, I can't afford the mortgage. We'll figure it out. Maybe sell the house, use the equity to set you up somewhere smaller. Or you could rent it out, use the income to cover expenses while you rebuild. Uncle Tom knows property management companies. There are options, Mom. You're not trapped anymore. A nurse came in to check vitals, and I stepped out to give them privacy. Uncle Tom was in the hallway talking to a woman in a pantsuit. Detective Sarah Chen, Organized Crime and Domestic Violence Unit. She extended her hand. You must be Jessica. Your uncle's been filling me in. I'd like to ask you some questions about Brian Henderson's pattern of behavior. Of course. We found a consultation room, and I spent the next hour walking Detective Chen through everything. The Friday night assault on me, the Sunday violence captured on video, the escalating control over Mom, the financial abuse, the isolation tactics. I showed her the video again, provided contact information for TechCorp and Karen Williams, gave her access to my documented timeline of events. This is solid evidence of a pattern. Detective Chen took notes efficiently. Combined with the physical evidence from last night and your mother's statement, we have a strong case for aggravated assault, domestic violence, and potentially other charges. Mr. Henderson's attorney is arguing that your mother's injuries were the result of a fall, but the evidence contradicts that story. A fall doesn't cause defensive wounds. Plus neighbors heard the assault, and one neighbor actually recorded audio of the screaming on her phone. She was about to call police earlier but hesitated, then finally did. That recording will be crucial. What happens to Brian now? Arraignment tomorrow morning. Given the severity of injuries and his pattern of violence, the DA will request high bail or no bail. Detective Chin closed her notebook. Between you and me, Ms. Parker, men like Brian Henderson don't stop until someone stops them. You stopped him by reporting to his employer. Your mother's injuries are terrible, but they could have been fatal if this pattern had continued unchecked. That was cold comfort, but I understood her point. Without intervention, escalation in domestic violence often led to homicide. Statistics backed that up. Brian might have eventually killed Mom in a rage, then expressed remorse and claimed he didn't mean it. At least now he'd face consequences before reaching that point. Mom was discharged from the hospital Friday afternoon with prescriptions for pain management and instructions to follow up with specialists for her broken ribs and concussion. Uncle Tom had prepared his guest room, and I'd taken another week off work to help coordinate everything that needed handling. The list was overwhelming. File for divorce, obtain a restraining order, secure the house on Cedar Lane, retrieve Mom's belongings, separate finances, coordinate with detectives and prosecutors. Each task represented another piece of disentangling a life Mom had built with Brian. Saturday morning, we drove past Cedar Lane so Mom could see it one final time before signing papers to put it on the market. Police tape still marked the property as a crime scene, though the investigation had cleared. The house looked haunted somehow, curtains drawn, grass already growing shaggy. This was supposed to be my fresh start after your father died. Mom stared at the house from the car. Instead, it became a prison I didn't even recognize I was in until the doors locked behind me. We don't have to sell it. I kept the engine running, ready to leave whenever she wanted. We could rent it out, keep it as an investment. No. Her voice was firm despite the pain medication making her drowsy. Sell it. Use whatever equity is left after the mortgage to start over somewhere new. I don't want anything that has Brian's mark on it. Uncle Tom handled the real estate logistics while I focused on the legal proceedings. Brian's arraignment resulted in bail set at $200,000, an amount he couldn't meet from jail. His public defender argued for reduction, citing his previously clean record and community ties. The prosecutor countered with the video evidence, the hospital photos, the pattern of escalating violence. The judge sided with the prosecution. Brian would await trial from county jail. Mom cried when I told her, relief mixed with something more complicated. He's going to hate me forever for this. She sat in Uncle Tom's kitchen, hands wrapped around tea she wasn't drinking. He'll blame me for everything, for raising you, for the job loss, for the criminal charges. All of it will be my fault in his mind. Maybe. I sat across from her. But Mom, that's not your burden to carry. Brian made choices. He chose violence. He chose control. He chose to risk everything rather than get help for his anger. Those are his failures, not yours. I know that intellectually. She touched her bruised face carefully. But emotionally, I still feel responsible. Like I should have seen the signs earlier, should have left sooner. Should have protected both of us better. Abuse rewires how you think. It took me months of therapy to understand that. I shared something I'd never told her. After college, I dated someone who was controlling. Not physically violent, but emotionally manipulative. It took my roommate Amy sitting me down with articles about psychological abuse before I recognized the pattern. We stay because abusers are good at making us believe we're the problem. That we're too sensitive, too difficult, too demanding. But we're not. They are. Mom looked at me with new understanding. I didn't know you went through that. It's part of why I recognized what Brian was doing so quickly. I'd learned the red flags. The isolation, the financial control, the way he'd rewrite reality to make you doubt your own perceptions. Classic abuser handbook. Your father never did any of that. Even during our rough patch when he made mistakes, Michael never tried to control or diminish me. That's the difference between a flawed man trying to be better and an abuser using power to dominate. I wish I'd remembered that distinction before marrying Brian. The house on Cedar Lane sold faster than expected. A young family bought it, excited about the good bones and large backyard. They had no idea what had happened there, and we saw no reason to disclose beyond what was legally required. Mom signed the papers without reading them thoroughly, trusting Uncle Tom and the real estate attorney to handle details. The equity after paying off the mortgage was modest, about $60,000, but enough to give Mom options. She decided on a small apartment near Uncle Tom's office, one bedroom with a balcony overlooking a park. It was the opposite of Cedar Lane in every way. Compact instead of sprawling, anonymous instead of notorious, hers alone instead of shared with someone who'd tried to erase her identity. I helped her move in, furnishing it simply with pieces from discount stores and some items salvaged from Cedar Lane that held no memories of Brian. Your dad's workshop tools. Uncle Tom arrived with boxes one afternoon. They were in the shed, which Brian apparently never touched. I thought Diane might want them, or we could save them for you. Mom opened the boxes reverently, pulling out Dad's favorite hammer, his measuring tape with the worn brass clip, the level he'd used on countless projects. These should be yours, Jess. Your father would want you to have them. We'll share them. I ran my hand over the smooth wooden handle of the hammer. Some for your place, some for mine. That way he's with both of us. Brian's trial was scheduled for 4 months out, but his attorney approached the prosecutor about a plea deal. Rather than risk a trial where the video evidence and hospital photos would be presented to a jury, Brian agreed to plead guilty to aggravated assault and domestic violence charges. The sentencing hearing was brief. The judge heard victim impact statements from Mom and me, reviewed the extensive documentation of Brian's violence, and sentenced him to 6 years in state prison with mandatory anger management and substance abuse treatment. It wasn't enough. No sentence would be enough for the terror he'd inflicted, the years of Mom's life he'd stolen, the sense of safety he'd shattered. But it was something. It was accountability and consequence, two things abusers rarely faced. Tech Corp's investigation concluded around the same time. The financial irregularities Brian had been involved in were significant enough for the company to file criminal fraud charges. Those charges would be prosecuted separately, potentially adding more years to Brian's sentence. Karen Williams sent me a formal thank you letter, noting that my report had likely saved the company millions in potential losses and protected other employees from a dangerous individual in leadership. 6 months after that Father's Day weekend, Mom started therapy and joined a support group for domestic violence survivors. She got a part-time job at Uncle Tom's office handling bookkeeping, rebuilding skills she'd let atrophy. She reconnected with old friends, went to Parker family gatherings, slowly reconstructed a life that was authentically hers. I visited monthly, flying down from Seattle for long weekends. We'd have dinner, walk in the park near her apartment, talk about everything and nothing. The relationship we'd lost during her marriage to Brian gradually returned, different but genuine. One Saturday afternoon, we drove to Riverside Memorial Park. Mom hadn't been to Dad's grave since before she married Brian. She knelt at the headstone, touching the carved letters of his name. I'm sorry, Michael. Sorry I let someone disrespect your memory. Sorry I forgot what real love looked like. But I'm remembering now. I'm finding my way back to the woman you married, the woman you believed in. I stood behind her, one hand on her shoulder. Dad would be proud of you, Mom. For surviving, for leaving, for rebuilding. That took courage. She stood, wiping tears. He'd be proud of you too. For standing up to Brian when I couldn't. For refusing to let abuse be normalized or hidden. You're more like your father than you know. Fierce when it matters. We walked back to the car through the oak trees, and I thought about how violence ripples outward, damaging not just immediate victims but entire families. But so does courage. My decision to film that assault, to report it, to refuse to stay silent had created its own ripples. Mom was free. Brian was imprisoned. Other potential victims at Tech Corp were protected. The house on Cedar Lane was home to a family who'd fill it with better memories. None of it erased what happened. Mom would always carry scars, some visible and some not. I'd always remember the sound of Brian's fist hitting my jaw, the sight of Mom's battered face in that hospital bed. But we'd survived. We'd fought back. We'd refused to let an abuser write the ending to our story. And that, I thought as we drove through Portland streets in afternoon sunlight, was a kind of victory. Not perfect, not without cost, but real and hard-won and ours. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.